All right, all right. Shalom, shalom. Happy Shavuot, Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. Today is special. This marks the giving of our Torah. I'm Emmanuel Dion, and I'm only here because of the grace and the mercy of the Most High. So, as we get started, before we teach the feast, I want to show how we arrived at the day. We began with Passover, right? In 2026, Passover began at sundown Wednesday, April 1st, with the first full day on Thursday, April 2nd. That is the season of deliverance, the blood, the leavening of Egypt, and the beginning of Israel's movement toward the mountain. How do we keep time? We keep time through the first sliver of the moon. All right. That first sliver marks the beginning of a month, right? That is the way that the ancients did it. So coming into the beginning of the year, the spring equinox often marks that time. Okay. It is often a marker scene that comes uh, in cohesion with spring, because we can see the spring happening with the uh, the the plants popping up and everything like that, everything turning green. So once it turns green and we see it turning green, which you will around that time, right? Which you will in February, you'll start to see those things, right? So after you see those things beginning to pop up, then what we look for is that first sliver. Okay. So that is a season of deliverance, blood, leavening of Egypt, leavening the leaving of Egypt, and the beginning of Israel's movement toward the mountain. So during the feast of unleavened bread, Torah commands the first fruits, wave sheaf, to be brought on the morrow after the Sabbath. And that's Leviticus 23, 10 and 11. The first of the harvest is lifted up before the Most High. For our account, this is how we arrived at this day. The weekly Sabbath during unleavened bread fell on Saturday, April 4th, 2026. So the morrow after the Sabbath was Sunday, April 5th, 2026, and that was the day we began counting. The day of the first fruits, April 5th, 2026, was a Sunday. That is day one, the first day of the week. So from there, Torah commands us to count 7 complete Sabbaths. The count runs day like this. Day one, Sunday, April 5th. That's the first fruits, or the wave sheaf is lifted. Then we have day 7, which is a Saturday. That's April 11th. First Sabbath complete. Day 14, Saturday, April 18th. Second Sabbath, day 21, April 25th. Day 28, that's the fourth Sabbath. Day 35, that's Saturday, May 9th. The fifth Sabbath complete. Day 42. That Saturday is May 16th. The sixth Sabbath, day 49. That Saturday is May 23rd. The seventh Sabbath complete. And then day 50, Sunday, May 24th, right? Which is today, sundown. Since the biblical day begins at evening, Shavuot begins at sundown, Saturday, May 23rd, and runs through Sunday, May 24th. So that is how we arrived at the date. We didn't begin with a church tradition with Pentecost, and we began with Torah. Passover gave the blood, first fruits lifted the first of the harvest. The count began, 7 Sabbaths were completed, the 50th day arrived. This is why the date matters. The count itself teaches the lesson. Deliverance must lead to command. The blood must lead to the mountain. The first fruit must lead to the harvest, and the harvest must come under covenant. All right. So that is how we arrived at said date. So me coming here tonight, part of Feast of Weeks is doing some level of charity. So this is my charity for tonight, is to come into a part of my charity tonight is to come and do this lesson here with you all, and give a full scope, or to the best of my ability, a full scope. So before we really get going, I definitely want to give all praises to the Most High, Eche Eche, I am that I am, and his son Yeshua. Um, Before we fully get started here, all right. So let's begin. So one of the things that I want to open up and I want to say, this is the Pentecost that's spoken of in Acts. And it's important to understand that there is no such thing as a Pentecostal um, religion. There is no such thing. It is false. Just like there's no such thing as Baptist. Yes, people can make it up, but that doesn't make it real. And let me explain to you, because penny in the Greek means 50. Pentecost means 50 days from the time the children of Israel left Egypt to the time that they arrived at Sinai was 50 days, right? So when you see Pentecost in the New Testament, that has legs, it has roots in the Torah, right? It has roots within the Torah first. That wouldn't even exist if it had not been for the Torah that had already spoken of these things. So it means 50 days. So you can't be Pentecostal no more than you can be Christmas or Thanksgiving. If you can't be Christmas, you can't be Pentecostal. It doesn't. That's not how it works. Okay. So this is a falsehood. Okay. So as we get started here, the opening charge is to gather your household, sit down. This is not a suggestion. This is a convocation, a holy calling together, commanded by the Most High. All right. Leviticus 23 and 21 says, and ye shall proclaim on the self same day that it may be a holy convocation unto you. Ye shall do no servile work therein. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. So this is a statute forever throughout all our generations. So before we get going here, I want to start with a blowing of the shofar. Let me see if I can find a video. I should have probably already had this up, but this is one I do all the time. Let me get my boy here going. All right. And we'll stand up and we will face the east. Let me get this up here. Okay. I see. There we go.
The house of Israel. Hey, it's another beautiful evening. It's about to come in. You already know we're getting ready for the Shabbat, right? So Shabbat Shalom to all my family out there. I'm gonna go ahead and let it rip. This is my tradition. Every Shabbat, I like to bring it in. You know what I'm saying? And when the Shabbat's going on, I like to take it out. You know what I'm saying? In peace, in shalom, and great salutations. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna go ahead and let it rip, and we're gonna make the heathens mad. You hear what I'm saying? Here it is. Here we go. Shabbat Shalom, the king is coming. Bless y'all.
All right. So that's to bring in the holy day with the shofar, you know. So Leviticus 23 and 21, let's read that again. It says, and ye shall proclaim on the self same day that it may be a holy convocation unto you. So that is a holy gathering. Ye shall do no servile work therein. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generation. So us in captivity, we have to understand we don't have any temple. We don't have a priest standing at the altar, and we don't have a wheat field. We are in captivity. None of that cancels the command. And all your dwellings throughout your generations, this dwelling qualifies. This generation qualifies. So sit down and hear. What is Shavuot? Shavuot means weeks. It is the feast of weeks. Exodus 34 and 22 states, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruit of wheat harvest. Numbers 28 and 26 says this, also in the day of the first fruits, when ye bring a new meat offering unto the Lord, after your weeks be out, ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work. And Deuteronomy 16 and 10 says, and thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto the Lord thy God with a tribute of a freewill offering of thine hand, which thou shalt give unto the Lord thy God, according as the Lord thy God hath blessed thee. Deuteronomy 16 and 10. So this is not a cultural celebration. It is a command assembly with a required offering tied to blessing received. All right. So what we do is from that time of Passover, that was the Passover season. We are to count our days, right? And with the increase that the Most High has allowed us to have, has blessed us to have, we are to use part of that increase to be able to dedicate back to Him through some form of charity. You know, that is the way that we would do it, through some form of charity. You go. Get your blanket. Okay. So number 2, why does the count matter? Leviticus 23, 15 and 16, it says, and ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. So the count is not for just aesthetics. The count is obedience in motion. So every day you count, you're saying, I am moving towards something the Most High commanded. And it's also anticipation. When we look at in the book of Acts, we see that the Holy Spirit came upon those men, came upon those people when they were in the Feast of Weeks, when they were in Pentecost. You understand? So it is also in anticipation. This was the time the Torah was given. This was the time that the husband came down, that Ishi came down, that the Most High came down. All right. So every day you count, you're saying, I'm moving towards something the Most High commanded. The count connects Passover, your deliverance, Shavuot, and your governance. Israel was brought out of Egypt in Exodus 12. They arrived at Sinai in Exodus 19 and 1, in the 3rd month after 50 days. The journey from blood on the doorpost to the voice at the mountain is the same journey the count rehearses every year. All right. So deliverance without the count produces a people who celebrate freedom but reject order. So we have to count the days. So and teach your children to count. Let the number mean something in your house. So you're actively counting the days on the calendar. 1, 2, 3. Just as much as you wanted to count down the days to your birthday, the days to Christmas when we kept Christmas, the days to Thanksgiving, or the days to whatever you were looking forward to, right? Whether it could be an interview, whatever that case was, whatever you were looking forward to, we had the tendency to keep account. So the count doesn't begin at random. Torah commands it to begin from the day the first fruits or wave sheaf is offered before the Most High. The first of the harvest lifted up, Leviticus 23, 10 and 11. The count starts there and runs 50 days to Feast of Weeks. The first fruit offering is the hinge on which the entire count turns. So the prophets point forward to one who would be the firstborn from the dead. All right. Because the ultimate goal of all of this comes to the Messiah, right? Abraham, one who was greater than Abraham, because Abraham was the one who was to set it up so that the Messiah was able to flow through him, right? So it's not about who came first. What it's about is who was assigned to be the position of the Messiah, who was assigned to die. While Abraham, our father, he's very great, yet let's understand he did not die for the remission of our sins. So Paul, reasoning entirely within Torah categories, declares in 1 Corinthians 15 and 20 that the Messiah is the first fruit of them that slept, raised on the very day the wave sheaf was presented. He did not invent the category, Torah created it, and the Messiah fulfilled it. So the count began at his rising. It runs to Shavuot. The harvest follows the first fruit. This is why the count matters. It was always marking the distance between the first fruit and the feast. Let's look at our another point here, the leavened bread, a picture of 50-day process. We have to think about, what does your observation say about bread? What needs to be done? We know it has to be kneaded. It has pressure, right? And it has to undergo that pressure and that pressing for a time, right? And then after it undergoes for a time, you can see that it has to rise, it has to sit, right? So and then it has to go through a process where it goes into the oven. It has to go through fire. So Leviticus 23 and 17 says, "Ye shall bring out of your habitations 2 loaves of 2/10 deals. They shall be a fine flour. They shall be baken with leaven. They are the first fruits unto the Lord." So the wave offering with the bread, right? That is something that we're gonna do even tonight. We're gonna wave the bread, thank the Most High, praise the Most High for the bread, right? That is the instruction. So notice what is commanded: leavened bread, where Passover is unleavened, right? Because we were being oppressed, we couldn't rise in Egypt, right? It shows the quickness and what we had to come out of. So notice is leavened bread, not unleavened. Leaven is specifically required for the wave loaves of Shavuot. This is not a contradiction of Passover, it's just a different feast with a different meaning. So leaven does not work in a moment, it requires a process. So mixing the ingredients are brought together. So you got to mix it all up, right? And if you see something, if your observation tells you something, you're more than welcome to chime in to the live and with your comments. Okay, you're more than welcome to. And I always like to put an invite there. All right. So then we had kneading. The pressure is applied, resistance is worked through. We have the time to rise. The process can't be rushed. And we have heat. It has to go through fire. So the 50 days between Passover and Shavuot are that process working in the people. Israel left Egypt raw. The wilderness needed them. The manna humbled them. Amalek tested them. By the time Sinai arrived, something had been worked into them that was not there at the Red Sea. And this is what you have to understand. Something has been worked into us since Passover that wasn't there at Passover. You understand? It's something has been mixed into us. Think about the journey that has taken place in your own life. Be able to compare your journey and all of the things that happened with the children of Israel along that journey. Okay? And be able to reflect your own life within that journey. All right? Deuteronomy 8:2 and 3 says, "And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger." So the wilderness was the rising process. Shavuot presents what the process produced. The leavened wave loaves represents the people, not sinless grain, but real human beings brought before the Most High as fruits of the harvest. The bread is leavened because the people are leavened. This is not the Passover where leaven is purged. This is Shavuot, where the harvested people, as they are brought under covenant and command. The bread you present at Shavuot is evidence of what the process produced in you. But the leavened bread cannot stand alone. Torah requires the sin offering beside it. The people are real and they are leavened, which means they require atonement before they can be presented. This requirement does not disappear in captivity, it points forward. Isaiah 53 speaks of one who would bear the iniquity of the people, upon whom the chastisement that produced their peace would fall. The leavened loaves need blood beside them. Torah knew that. And Isaiah confirmed it, and the Messiah was the answer to what the feast was always requiring. So this is still pointing to the Messiah. We need his sacrifice, and we have to recognize his sacrifice. See, the thing is, my thought process is this: the Most High and his all-knowing, he knew that the children of Israel would need a sacrifice because we would go into captivity. And so therefore a part of that, at least partially, right? I'm not saying this is the full scope, but when you look at us as a people, we don't have lambs to sacrifice. Most of us do not as a nation. And we don't have a priesthood to be able to stand in the gap for us to be able to do those sacrifices. So we don't do lambs and we don't do goats. Most of us don't own acres. Most of us don't own land. Most of us own homes that are subjected to HOA. You can't be out there trying to kill no lambs and so on and so forth, because HOA might come for you. You understand? So knowing that we wouldn't be able to have a land and be able to do that sacrifice, the Most High in his graciousness and his mercy allowed the Messiah to be a propitiation, a perpetual sacrifice for us into the land of captivity. So while we can do the leavening, we can do the leavened bread, right? We can wave that as an offering. Yet we have to be able to recognize the sacrifice that the Messiah gave us. And I'm not saying this is you can be absent of having an animal, to eat and things of that nature, but the Messiah is operating as that blood that we need to go along with this leaven. All right. So what do the animal sacrifices, what do they teach? Leviticus 23:18 and 19 prescribes, alongside the wave loaves, 7 lambs without blemish, burnt offerings, 1 young bullock and 2 rams, burnt offerings, 1 kid of the goats, sin offerings, 2 lambs, peace offerings. The order tells the full story. The burnt offerings complete consecration. All right. They complete the consecration, fully being sold out to the Most High. So everything given to the Most High, nothing held back. This is the declaration that increase does not belong to the one who produced it. It belongs to the one who who is the giver, who allows it. It belongs to the Most High. So the sin offering, even at the moment of presenting the first fruit or harvest, atonement is still required. The people being presented are leavened. They carry sin. The offering acknowledged this honestly before the Most High. You do not come to this feast as though increase alone qualifies you. The peace offerings, a shalom between the Most High and the household, relationship confirmed, covenant standing restored. So the sequence is going to look like this: bring what the process produced, right? Acknowledge it required blood to stand, and then you receive shalom. A captivity without altar or priesthood, you can't perform these sacrifices, but the lesson they teach must still be spoken within our households. Increase without atonement is presumption. Shalom between a household and the Most High is not assumed, it is covenant based. It is covenant based. Let me go back here and so that is extremely important. And we understand that covenant was established with us through vows, through blood, through his Torah. Okay? So Torah never removed the blood requirement. It pointed forward to where it would be finally met. The goats and bulls of Leviticus 23 covered the feast year by year, but the prophet spoke of something further. Psalms 40, verse 6 through 8 says, The Most High does not desire sacrifice for its own sake. He desires one who comes to do his will, with Torah written in the heart. Hebrews 10 cites that psalm as testimony. One came in whom the requirement was not covered but fulfilled. The offerings command of Shavuot are not empty ritual. They are the legal architecture that pointed to a greater offering, made once by the one chosen for the purpose before the foundation of the world, which is Messiah. He was chosen from the foundation of the world for this very purpose. So, why is first fruit important? Let's look at it. Why is first fruit important? Proverbs 3, we're going to go to verse 9 and 10. It says, Honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruit of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. So the first fruit principle is this: what comes first belongs to the one who gave the increase. Deuteronomy 8, verse 8, verses 10 through 18. Deuteronomy verse 8, verses 10 through 18. And I'm going to do a little parsing here, but let me pull it up. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 10 through 18. It says, When thou hast eaten and art full, then thou shalt bless the Lord thy God for the good land which he hath given thee. Beware that thou forget not that the Lord thy God, in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command thee this day. So whenever we eat and we're full, you know how we say grace before, we also are supposed to thank the Most High after eating as well, right? It's a principle that you understand who it came from and who gives the increase. And this is also too when you get increased financially, and you'll learn that this principle should permeate every aspect of your life. Verse 12, lest when thou hast eaten and art full, and hast built goodly houses and dwelt therein, and when thy herds and thy flocks multiply, and thy silver and thy gold is multiplied, and all that thou hast is multiplied, then thine heart be lifted up, and thou forget the Lord thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. And many people forget when they say, I'm a self-made millionaire. I got here by myself. I did this success by myself, forgetting the Most High, forgetting the people who maybe had a hand in helping them get there. Verse 15 says, Who led thee through the great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, who brought thee forth water out of the rock of flint. Who did this? The Most High. So when we're looking at this time of this 50 days, we're looking at ourselves, and we're looking at the time that we went through the wilderness. We're looking at the time that we were attacked by serpents, or those who were being deceitful, acting in a certain type of way. We're looking at the time where scorpions and drought probably were around us. So we're looking at the Most High keeping us safe throughout all these times. How many times have you been driving, right, and you made it to your destination safely? That was the Most High. We have a tendency to take it for granted when we make it from point A to point B, when we have to keep in mind that some people had intentions to make it to point B and never did. Verse 16 says, Who fed thee in the wilderness with manna, which thy fathers knew not, that he might humble thee, and that he might prove thee to do thee good at thy latter end. So why is he doing this? He's doing this so that he may be able to prove us. He's doing this so that he may be able to reward us, right? To prove what is in our heart. Now, this is the thing. Now, he already understands what is in our heart, but approving allows us to be able to see it. See, the thing is, if you're in school and you receive a test, that is a proving, right? And you're able to see what you knew and what you did not know. by your grade and by the things that you miss. It exposes the condition of your knowledge. And this is the same thing that allows us to that is allowed to happen when we go through these tribulations. It's not that the Most High has left us. It's the fact that he's always been there. But during these tests, you're able to see the results that he already knows. Is so that you can see what problems you miss. It is so that you can see the condition of your own heart and that you can make a correction. Verse 17 says, "And thou say in thine heart, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth." Verse 18, "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day." So it is through the Most High that he gives us the strength to be able to get wealth. And we must understand that it is him who's doing it. And sometimes he'll take us through a season of drought. He'll take us through a season of hunger. He'll take us through a season of being emotionally challenged so that he can prove what is in us, so that he can reward us at the latter end. It is all for our good. It is all for refining. So the danger of harvest is pride. The cure of pride is first fruits, the deliberate physical act of returning the first portion before you consume anything. In captivity, your first fruits may be money, time, labor, provision. The principle does not change. Ecclesiastes 5:4 and 5 says, "When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. If thou said you honor the Most High with your increase, pay it on this day first." So let's look at our next point here. Why is Sinai connected to Shavuot? Because the harvest of bodies out of Egypt was incomplete without the covenant that governed them. I'm going to say that again. Because the harvest of bodies out of Egypt was incomplete without the covenant that governed them. So the Most High brought them out of Egypt, but it had to be completed. Exodus 19:1 says, "In the third month," we're going to look at verse 1 and verse 5. Exodus 19:1 says, "In the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they in the wilderness of Sinai." Right? Let's drop down to verse 5. "Now, therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine." So this is the stipulation. That's why it's so important to learn the covenant. Most people, their understanding transgresses the covenant. It goes outside of the borders of the covenant because they have not established a firm foundation within the covenant. The covenant is the beginning of our understanding. That's why Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning." Exodus 19:10 says, "Wash your garments." And verse 12 sets boundaries. Verse 14 says, "Sanctify yourselves." And then Exodus 20, the commandments spoken aloud from the mountain by the Most High himself. And I'm kind of going through these, kind of touching on them for time's sake, right? Because I got a lot I want to cover here. So this is Shavuot, the feast of the harvest of a people, not grain, but a nation brought under command. A freed people without law become a mob. It becomes anarchy. Egypt came out of Israel at Sinai. So not at the Red Sea. The Red Sea removed the chains and Sinai removed the Egyptian thinking. So this is where our mind is to shift, not to shift more towards the Most High and to pull away from the ways of society and America, Egypt, modern day. Shavuot declares every year you are not just delivered, you are governed. As a witness, not as a foundation, but as confirmation. Acts 2:1 says this. Acts 2:1 records that the assembly was gathered on the day of Shavuot when the Most High moved again. This did not create a new feast. It confirmed that the feast was still being kept, still commanded, and still enforced. Torah established it, and Acts 2 only witnesses it, right? And that is what I was saying at the beginning about Pentecost. Number 7, How does a family honor it without land, altar, or temple? Leviticus 23:21 already answered this. In all your dwellings throughout your generations. The dwelling is the sanctuary in captivity. The household is the congregation. The head of the household stands in the teaching office. Deuteronomy 16:11 and 12 says this. And thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite that is within thy gates and the stranger and the fatherless, and the widow that are among you. And thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. So this is a commanded rejoicing. This is a commanded rejoicing. Whatever you are going through, the Spirit of the Most High is strong and can enable you through His grace to give you joy throughout this time. I don't care what you're going through. For this day, it is commanded that we are to rejoice. And when you make a decision to walk in that rejoicing, then the Spirit of the Most High will come upon you. We have to keep in mind that the water, when the Levites were carrying the ark, the water did not split until they made the first step. You got to make a step. The water didn't split until Moses put the rod out. You got to make the first step in faith, in trust. Romans 14:23 tells us that what that is without faith is sin, right? So this is an obedience. We must be in rejoicing in this day. It is required. I don't care what you're going through. Rejoicing is a commandment. So the assembly is built from the household outward. This is the order. No temple required, no priesthood required. The commandment reaches you where you are. So let's look at the next thing here. What does the feast require from each member? The man, it requires him to lead, open the Torah and teach it. Give your first fruit offering, set the order of the day. Don't let the household drift into leisure while the commanded assembly stands unobserved. To the woman, prepare the table, honor the day in the home, instruct the children, instruct the children in what is being kept and why. Your household management only on a holy convocation is itself an act of obedience. The children sit, learn, ask questions. Deuteronomy 6 and 7 says these things are to be taught diligently. So Shavuot is a classroom. Behave accordingly, children. So for the whole household, no servile work. This means the day is set apart, not a regular day with a prayer added, a day distinguished from all other days by what you do not do, not do as much as what you do. So let's look at the next question that I have here. This is number 9. I hadn't been numbering them, but number 9. How should the day include the poor, stranger, fatherless, and the widow? Let's look at Leviticus 23 and 22. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not make clean riddance of the corners of thy field when thou reapest, neither shalt thou gather any gleaning of thy harvest. Thou shalt leave them unto the poor and to the stranger. I am the Lord your God. So this is a commandment that is attached to the feast. It is a part of the feast command itself. The gleaning instruction is embedded inside Leviticus 23, the same chapter that commands the convocation. And captivity, how does this look? You have no field, but you have corners. You have something. Whatever increase the Most High has given, a portion belongs to the poor and the stranger before this day closes. It belongs to the poor and the stranger before the days closes. Figure it out. That's the charge. Deuteronomy 16 and 11 says, Deuteronomy 16 and 11 names them by order: the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow. Find one, feed one, and include one. So the stranger means Gentiles as well. This is not just talking about foreign Israelites. That's why it often names Israelites as being present, and then it names strangers as well. So this isn't just talking about people who are foreigners, because in that case, we're all foreigners. We're all strangers in that case, because this is talking about strangers within the land, right? So it's safe to say that this also includes Gentiles. right? So one of the things that we have to understand is that the Lord reigns on the just and the unjust alike. So if you have a farm, right, and that farm, let's say you have rural land, right, and then on one side you got somebody who keeps Torah and they're righteous and good, and then on the other side you have somebody who does not. When it rains above, it rains on both of them the same. That goes to show you that there's a basic level of compassion that the Most High gives man, even when man is making himself an enemy of the Creator. So there are still these basic necessities that must be given to them out of compassion. So if you only love somebody who looks like you, then how is that speaking to the Most High? There's not a desire for anybody to inherit or to inhabit the kingdom of hell or to inhabit hell. Not at all. It is the desire of the Most High that all will inhabit the kingdom of heaven if they will just obey and humble themselves. Right? So we show the fruit of the Most High when we don't just love those who look like us, sound like us, act like us, believe like us, but we can show love to those who do not as well, so that they may be able to see our light, and maybe it will be able to speak to them more. I know that from my personal experience, for the people that I've given, money on the streets or helped on the streets, almost 100% of the time, they look up and thank the Lord. They tell you thank you, but they always thank God. Almost always, because they understand who it's coming from. Because He has sent us to be that light. He has sent us to help fulfill that need. That's why it's depicted in His Torah, right? That where it tells us, even if you see your enemy under his burden, that it requires a proactive. When you see that person, we are to proactively help them even if they don't ask for help. So this charity that we're talking about giving is not just for those who are holding up a sign saying help. It's for those who you can obviously see needed proactively, because that is what the Torah requires. Because the Torah is a book, the Most High is one of compassion. And if we are to be cut of His cloth, we are to carry that same compassion. All right. So, number 10, what is the spiritual danger of celebrating harvest without obedience? What is the spiritual danger of celebrating harvest without obedience? Deuteronomy 8:11 says, beware that thou forget not the Lord thy God, and not keeping His commandments and His judgments and His statutes which I command thee this day. The danger is increase produces comfort. Comfort produces forgetfulness. Forgetfulness produces the belief that your own hand produced the blessing by yourself. A household that feasts on Shavuot without keeping commandments is rehearsing the sin of the golden calf, celebrating without covenant. They kept the form of the feast and violated the substance of it simultaneously. The leavened bread without the sin offering beside it is incomplete. The waved loaves without the blood is presumption. Presumption. You cannot present yourself as first fruits while refusing the order that governs the harvest. And that's why I'm putting so much emphasis on keeping the remembrance and recognizing the sacrifice of Hamashiach Yeshua. Ecclesiastes 5:4-5 says, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. So if you're going to call this day holy, make it holy indeed, in order, in giving, in teaching, and in obedience. The feast without the commandment is a meal eating in danger. Let's look at number 11. Let's look at Ruth. Because when you read the book of Ruth, it happened during Shavuot. Ruth, the harvest, the covenant, and the redemption. So read Ruth on this day. It is the tradition. The book is set entirely during harvest season. Every element of Shavuot is present in the narrative. This is what happens when we show a Gentile compassion and love. And I know that there are people talking about she was a Israelite. No, she wasn't. I would love to believe that she was. I really would. I really would love for her to be an Israelite. I really would. That's the story that I would like. But I don't believe that that is the truth. The scripture says she was a Moabitess. She was a Moabite, right? So there was a God dog it, I don't remember his name. Maybe I have to put it in the comments later. But in the book of Judges, there was a Benjamite who slayed an oppressor, a Moabite oppressor. He was a fat man, and when he said he had a word for him from the Lord, he stood up. And what the sages teach is because he stood up out of respect, that is why Ruth came from his bloodline. So the sages did not believe that he was that Ruth was of Israelite. No. Mm-mm. She was of the bloodline of Moabite, and if it wasn't for Boaz acting in obedience, will we have a Messiah? So Ruth gleaning in the field, the gleaning command of Leviticus 23 and 22 is in action. So Boaz leaving corners and commanding his men not to rebuke her is Deuteronomy 16 and 11 lived out. So Ruth, a stranger, joining herself to the covenant people. The stranger included at the feast. Boaz as kinsman, redeemer, redemption and inheritance restored. The line from this harvest runs to David and forward. We have Ruth 1 and 16 is a covenant declaration spoken in the middle of a harvest journey. It says, "Whether thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God." A stranger spoke those words during harvest season, walking toward the covenant. Read it to your household. Let them hear what it costs and what it produces. Boaz is more than a good man. He is a type embedded in Torah's harvest season to show how redemption operates. He has the legal right to redeem. He has the resources. When another who had the right refused, Boaz stepped forward willingly. He paid the full price. He restored what was lost. He brought the stranger into covenant and inheritance. The line from this harvest runs to David. The prophets declare that one would come from the house of David to sit on this throne and rule with justice and righteousness. That's Isaiah 9, 7, and Jeremiah 23 and 5. That throne is not incidental. It is the legal destination of the redemption line that runs through Boaz, through Ruth, through David. The Messiah is not an interruption of that line. He is its appointed end, the kinsman who had the right, who had the resources, who came willingly when others would not, who paid the full price to restore what captivity had taken. So Torah set the pattern at harvest. The prophets traced the line. The Messiah arrives not because he came after David, but because he was chosen for the purpose the whole narrative was always moving toward. It was strategic. So let's look at number 12, water, baptism, and the Feast of Weeks. The 50-day walk Passover to Shavuot is always a water pattern. It's not only a harvest pattern or a covenant pattern. Blood, water, wilderness, mountain, voice, covenant, spirit. These move together through the whole journey. We have the blood first. Israel is delivered by the blood on the doorpost in Exodus 12. The blood marks, separates, and begins the journey. Nothing moves until the blood is applied. That is the legal foundation of the entire walk. Deliverance is by blood before it is by anything else. And then we have the water. After Passover, Israel passes through the Red Sea in Exodus 14. The water separates them permanently from Egypt. They cannot go back. The sea closes behind them. Paul reasons from this directly in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 and 2. Israel was under the cloud, passed through the sea, and was baptized unto Moses. That is the Torah language applied to the water crossing. They passed through water and came under covenant leadership. Blood brought them out, water brought them through, and the wilderness then tested what the blood and water had produced. And then we have water again at the mountain. Before the commandments are spoken in Exodus 20, the people must prepare themselves. Exodus 19 and 10 commands them to wash their garments. Exodus 19 and 14 records that the people washed. The washing came before the voice. You cannot come to the mountain casually. The people had to be cleansed before they could stand and hear the covenant of the Most High. So I want to go to, since I have Exodus 19 up, Exodus 19 and 10 says, and the Lord said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes. So there it is, that water, that washing again. Verse 14 says, and Moses went down from the mount unto the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. All right. So water is embedded in the Shavuot pattern. The washed people are the people ready to receive the covenant. That is not incidental. It is legal preparation Torah required before the voice could be heard. And in Exodus 19, why is that important? Because this is the preparation that they are going to receive in Exodus 20. This is Shavuot that we're reading about in preparation of in Exodus 19, right? In verse 16, it says, and it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. So Exodus 19 and verse 16 can be read in cohesion and in fluidly with Exodus 20, right? Even though the chapter split, that's still a continuation of the same time. So Acts 2 keeps the same pattern. The assembly in Acts 2 is gathered on Shavuot. Peter preaches the resurrection of the Messiah. The hearers are pierced in the heart, struck by what they hear, as Israel was struck by the voice at Sinai. They ask what they must do, and Peter answers in Acts 2 and 38, repent and be baptized. This command was not a new thing that Paul came about and said. It stood exactly inside the Shavuot pattern Torah had already established. The people heard the covenant witness. Their hearts were struck. They repented. They passed through the water, and they received the spirit, or the breath. That breath, that water is to bridge us back to the breath that was breathed into Adam at the beginning. So this is the blood, water, repentance covenant, the spirit or the breath command. The same order the feast had been rehearsing from the beginning. Water, spirit, and inward covenant. So water marks the outward cleansing and the covenant turning. The spirit writes the covenant inward. The breath writes the covenant inward. How do we know that? Because the Torah always was, right? Because when the breath was breathed into Adam, that was the covenant made there. That was the very essence of the Most High given into Adam, like a seed going into a woman. It was in him, it lived in him, and it had life, right? So there was no need to write, thou shalt not murder, even though it was always wrong. We can clearly see that with Cain. Cain murdered before it was written in the Ten Commandments, and yet he was still punished for it. Why? Because the standard always was. It was the character that was in the Most High that he gave. So through this water, through the giving of the Torah is the renewing of the breath that comes within us. That is why Pentecost is so important. That is why we see in Acts chapter 2, the breath is breathed into those people, and then they have the tongues of fire. They're able to interpret what each other is saying. They're able to understand what each other is saying. And what is that? The speaking of tongues is not just gibberish. The speaking of tongues is being able to understand each other in your native language. I speak English. If somebody else speaks Yoruba, okay? If somebody else speaks Igbo or Spanish or whatever the case may be, German, I don't care what it is. When we come into this time, then the spirit of the Most High operating in a oneness allows us to understand each other in that tongue, in our native tongue, right? Is able to translate and transfer to us. So that's why at Shavuot, we see the spirit of the Most High coming upon the people. And that's why time is so important. So we prep ourselves in order to receive this, right? We prep ourselves in order to receive the breath of the Most High that was given to Adam in the beginning. So water marks the outward cleansing and the covenant turning. The spirit writes the covenant inward. These are not two separate things. They are two parts of the same work. Jeremiah 31 and Hebrews 8 promised that a new covenant would be made with the house of Israel and of Judah. Ezekiel 36:25-27 holds them together in a single declaration, right? Let's go to Hebrews 8 and 8 real quick. I think that's where it's written, Hebrews 8 and 8. For finding fault with them, he saith, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continue not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. So we can see this playing out in Exodus 19 when they said, all that you say we will do, right? But they didn't do that. They broke it. They didn't hold true to it. Okay? Verse 10 says, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the greatest to the least. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. And that he saith, the new covenant he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. That is this time that we are in. So the water prepares the vessel, the blood seals the covenant, and the Spirit writes the law inwardly. Obedience proves the heart has received it. Shavuot is the feast where the washed people stand before the voice, receive the covenant, and become a harvest under command, right? And we see that in Exodus 20. When we drop down, what is that? In verse 18, and all the people saw the thundering and the lightning and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. This is the covenant where they departed themselves. And this is the new covenant where Messiah is that blood to be able to bridge us back to the Most High. And they said unto Moses, speak thou with us and we will hear, but let not God speak with us lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near into the thick darkness where God was. So this is the invite for us to be able to draw close, for the Spirit of the Most High to be able to be breathed into us. Number 13, the Sinai sequence, arrival, command, covenant, ratified. Exodus 19, 20, and 24 from a single covenant sequence. Each part is necessary. The lesson of Shavuot is not complete without all three. It is Exodus 19, arrival and preparation. Israel arrives at Sinai. The people wash their garments, sanctify themselves, and set bounds at the mount. The Most High descends in fire and smoke. The people are prepared to hear. That's why the counting is so important. It is in preparation. It is in anticipation of Ishi, right? Of the husband coming. Exodus 20, the commandments spoken. The Most High speaks the commandments directly to Israel out of the midst of the fire. The people were not brought out of Egypt to define freedom for themselves. It is not up to us to define freedom for ourselves. They were brought to the mountain to hear the voice that would govern them. This is the heart of Shavuot, not only harvest, but government. The harvest must come under command. Exodus 24, the covenant ratified. Exodus 24 does not carry a feast day label, but it belongs to Sinai covenant sequence connected Shavuot. It is the sealing of what Exodus 19 and Exodus 20 began. Moses read the book of the covenant in the ears of the people, Exodus 24 and 3. They said, all the words which the Lord hath said we will do, Exodus 24 and 7. All that the Lord has said will we do and be obedient, Exodus 24 and 8. Behold the blood of the covenant. So the people agreed twice to obey. The blood sealed it. Shavuot is not merely about receiving words. It is about a people agreeing to be governed by those words. The blood was required. The obedience was declared and the covenant was confirmed. The sequence, Exodus 19 prepares the people and Exodus 20 gives the commandments. Exodus 24 seals that covenant. The phrase from Exodus 24 and 8, behold the blood of the covenant, does not disappear from scripture. It appears on the night before the crucifixion, when the Messiah took the cup and declared it to be the blood of the covenant, which is Matthew 26 and 28. We see that resurrect again. Matthew 26 and 28. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remissions of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the fruit of this vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. 28 is the highlight of the verse that I'm going for. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remissions of sin. He didn't invent the language. Christ didn't invent this language. He spoke it because Moses spoke it first. He was not introducing a new idea. He was standing inside the legal framework Torah had already established and declaring that the covenant was now being sealed through him. So Exodus 24 also records a covenant meal on the mountain. Exodus 24 and 11, the elders of Israel saw the Most High and ate and drank, covenant confirmed by shared table. That pattern, blood, oath, meal, is the legal architecture of covenant ratification in Torah. The Messiah did not set it aside. He walked through it as the appointed mediator. Jeremiah 31 required and Hebrews 8 and 9 confirms. So let's look at number 14, Shavuot and the covenant written in the heart. Jeremiah 31 through 33 does not cancel the Sinai covenant. It announces where the covenant is where that covenant is going. It says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Let's drop down. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. So the new covenant is made with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. The law is not removed. The law is placed deeper in the inward parts, in the mind and in the heart. Hebrews 8 through 10 repeats that same promise, confirming that the covenant of Jeremiah 31 was not fulfilling by replacing Torah, but by writing Torah inwardly upon the people of Israel and Judah. Hebrews 8 and 10 says, I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. At Sinai, the covenant was spoken aloud and written on stone. Jeremiah prophesied that the same covenant moving inward. Hebrews 8 confirms that promise. The law doesn't change, the location changes from stone and scroll to mind and heart. The 50-day walk shows the pattern every year. Blood, deliverance, wilderness, testing, gathering, voice, covenant, command. Shavuot was covenant. The covenant was Torah, and the new covenant placed Torah within the people. A covenant requires a mediator. Moses stood between the Most High and Israel at Sinai. He read the book, then the people answered, and he sprinkled the blood on them. Right? He sprinkled the blood on them like the consummation of marriage on the marriage night. Right? He was not the source of the covenant. He appointed a mediator. Jeremiah 31 promised a new covenant, but did not name his mediator. Hebrews 9 and 15 names him. The Messiah is the mediator of the new covenant. He is not greater because he came. He is not greater because he came later. He is greater because he was chosen for a purpose Moses could only foreshadow. The one mediator whose own blood ratified the covenant he declared. Let's look at 15. This is part 15. Pentecost, the fire, the voice, and the tongues. Acts 2 did not create a new feast. It happened on Shavuot. While the assembly was gathered at the appointed time, the feast was already being kept. The Most High moved upon a people already standing inside Torah time. The fire points back to Sinai. At Sinai, the Most High descended in fire and spoke his commandment from the mountain. Exodus 19:18 and Deuteronomy 4 and 12. The fire was on the mountain and the voice came out of the fire. At Pentecost in Acts 2, the tongues like fire rested upon each of the gathered witnesses. The fire of Sinai was not resting upon the people themselves. The voice that came from the mountain was now being carried through their mouths, a manifestation of what we have already read. Acts 2, 3, and 4 says, and there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them, and they were all filled with the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. So, speaking in tongues and what the text says about Acts 2 defines the tongues plainly. Every man heard them speak in his own language. Every man heard them in his own tongue wherein he was born. They heard them speak the wonderful works of the Most High in their own tongues. So, speaking in tongues in Acts 2 was not supernatural speech in real languages understood by the hearers. This was not disorder or emotional noise. It was covenant testimony made understandable to the scattered people gathered from many regions. The feast had drawn Israelites from across dispersion, each speaking a different tongue. The Most High caused the message to go forth in their own language so every witness could hear their wonderful works of the Almighty. So this shows how we become one. This shows how we are this through this feast day, how we become one people, one language. So Pentecost wasn't removing the Torah, it was witness of the Torah being carried inward and spoken outward by the power of the Spirit. Just as Jeremiah 31 and Hebrews 8 promised, this wasn't a new religion. This is not a new religion. This, you can't use this and go branch off and do some stuff. It don't work like that. It was Shavuot reaching its appointed witness among the gathered assembly. So in Sinai, the fire came upon the mountain, and Pentecost fire came upon the people. And at Sinai, it gave the covenant aloud, but Pentecost witnessed the covenant moving forward. The word that came from the fire now came through the mouths of covenant witnesses. What was the message of those witnesses carried? Peter stood up in Acts 2 and 14 and declared it plainly. The Messiah delivered by the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of the Most High was put to death, raised up, and exalted, and Israel was called to recognize what had been done. The content of the testimony at the Shavuot assembly was the resurrection, not a new religion, not the abolition of Torah. The declaration that the first fruit wave offering had been fulfilled, that the one chosen before the ages had been raised from the dead exactly 50 days before this very feast, and that the covenant promised by Jeremiah was now moving inward by the power of that same Spirit. He was always the goal. Christ was always the goal. Torah built the structure, and the prophets named the destination. The Messiah arrived not because sequence gave him authority, but because purpose did. He came after Abraham, after Moses, and after David, and yet he's greater than them all. Not by chronology, but by the weight of what he was chosen to accomplish. As Hebrews 7 reasons from Torah itself, the one who blesses is greater than the one who is blessed. The one through whom the covenant is finally sealed is greater than the one who foreshadowed it. That's deep. I'm going to say it one more time. The one who blesses is greater than the one who is blessed. The one who through whom the covenant is finally sealed is greater than the one who foreshadowed it, who spoke of it to come. Shavuot declares every year that the harvest must come under command. He is both the first fruit of that harvest and the one who enacted the covenant that commands it. So let's look at the practical order for the household. At sundown, the beginning of the day, a note on cooking when Shavuot follows Shabbat. When Shavuot follows immediately after Shabbat, the household cannot cook during Shabbat in preparation for the feast. Shabbat forbids it. Shavuot opens at nightfall when Shabbat releases. So the gathering and the declarations and the readings happen first, and the meal is prepared afterward. That is not a hardship on us, it's just the way that the Most High designed it. Convocation before feast, covenant before table. The meal follows when it is ready. If the household prepared food before Shabbat began on Friday evening using the Eruv Tavshalin framework, a cooked item and a baked item set aside as legal permission to cook across holy days, the food may be used. Otherwise, cook after Shabbat closes and Shavuot opens. The feast is still the feast. So that is a recommendation that for maybe for next year, if you didn't prepare this year, I know I did not, because I'm still in a preparation and learning phase. I'm still working out the kinks within myself. I'm still refining the steps. And I know a lot of us have to work. right? But a great thing to do in preparation and foreseeing this, had we been numbering the days, right? We would have seen this coming. We would have foresaw it coming. And Friday, we would have prepared so that Saturday, all we had to do, Saturday sundown, all we had to do was heat up the food. And we're now trying to eat at 9, 10 o'clock at night and cook. And you don't have to do it at this time either. You're not enslaved to that. You can very well eat regular tonight if need be, and come in the morning or come the next day. You can prepare food. And right now in this part of the season, it's not sundown or dusk until almost 9 o'clock. So you can eat well before that and still have time to do it, and the next day as well. All right. So we want to make sure that we gather the household, declare the day aloud. This is the Feast of Weeks, commanded in Leviticus 23. Observe by your household in obedience to the Most High. Read Exodus 19, 20, 24 aloud. Let the arrival, the commandments, and the covenant ratification be heard in your house as they were given at the mountain. Set aside your first fruit offering and consecrate it before the household. So during the day, no servile work. Read Leviticus 23, Numbers 28, Deuteronomy 16. Read Exodus 14, 1 Corinthians 10, 1 and 2. Read together. Let the household see Israel passing through water and coming under covenant leadership, and trace the pattern to baptism. Read Ezekiel 36, 25 through 27 aloud. Let the household hear water, new heart, and spirit held together in a single promise and connected to what Shavuot declares. Teach the children the meaning of the count and the leavened bread. Read Ruth, see the harvest, the covenant, the redemption. Read Jeremiah 31, 31 through 33, and Hebrews 8, 8 and 10 through 10 aloud. Let the household hear the promise of the covenant written inwardly. And if you have been during this, if you have been tuned in here and this has been ringing throughout your household, perhaps this can supplement for that. Read 1 Corinthians 15, 20 aloud. Let the household hear that the Messiah is the first fruit of them that slept, and that the count began at his rising. Praise the Most High. It began at his resurrection. Read Matthew 26, 28 aloud. Let the household hear the words, the blood of the covenant, spoken by the Messiah, and trace them back to Exodus 24 and 8, where Moses spoke them first. Present the leavened bread before the Most High. Read Leviticus 23, 17 over it aloud. Give to the poor, a stranger, before the day closes. Eat together with gladness. So the declaration for the household, and you can speak this aloud together. I encourage you. We have been delivered. We are not yet home, but we are not without order. The commandments govern this house. The Most High gave the increase. The first fruits belong to him. The process has worked in us. We are not the same people who left. We have not forgotten where we came from. We have not forgotten who brought us out. We will not forget who governs us. Torah built the structure. The prophets named the destination. The Messiah was always the goal. Chosen not because he came last, but because of the purpose he was sent to fulfill. Then the count began at his rising. The covenant was sealed through his blood. The law is being written inwardly by his breath. This house stands under Torah. Shavuot is kept in this dwelling, in this generation. My closing charge to you: Israel left Egypt as a multitude. They arrived at Sinai as a people being formed. The bread was needed in the wilderness. The 50 days worked something into them, something into us. By Shavuot, they were ready to stand at the mountain and hear the voice of the one who brought them out, the Most High. Is that you? Are you ready to hear the voice? You are in a similar wilderness. Captivity is not the end of the story, but deliverance is incomplete if the delivered people live without the commandments that govern them. Shavuot is the annual declaration that the harvest of grain, of wealth, of people must come under command. The leavened loaves say, we are real, we are in process, and we are being presented. The sin offering beside them says, we do not come presuming. The peace offering says the covenant shalom is the goal. So keep this feast and teach it to your children. Count the days next year. Give the gleaning. Honor the Most High with the first fruits. Set the order in your house. Deuteronomy 16:12 says, and thou shalt remember thou wast a bondman in Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. Shalom to the household. And so with us, we want to make sure we do a wave offering before the Most High. Can you bring me some bread? We do a wave offering before the Most High. Wave it in front of him. He is the reason for it. He is the reason for it. May the Most High bless us to increase. By this time next year, we'll have a bread making machine. We can make our own to show the increase. You got 2 loaves? It's 2 loaves. All right. So before we get ready to close out here, I'm going to do a wave offering of the bread. I got some bread here. I got some bread here. Praise the Most High. So I want to just do a wave offering before the Lord. Thank you, Abba. We praise you and we bless you. We thank you for this increase. We recognize you and we understand that you are the reason for the increase. Thank you for all the work that you've done in us. We praise you and we bless you. May this message reach your people. We thank you for all that you've done for us. In your son, Yeshua. Amen. All right. Bless the Lord. Thank you for joining in. And keep the feast. Shalom.